Hey everybody, it's Paul Yeager, and this is the MTOM podcast, which is a production of Market to Market and Iowa PBS. We're in video here in 2021. We're going to try to do more of these installments in video form, so you can still take us with your audio, but you're also going to be able to watch us maybe on your smart TV or however you consume YouTube videos or Market to Market videos. We're here for you. This week, we are going to talk about the weather because you know what? We always need to talk about the weather. James Roemer is a repeat guest. We had him on in mid-2020 to talk about the weather and the markets. And James's company is Best Weather Inc. He brings an experience of watching the weather and the commodity markets. We were talking about La Nina really before it was a major topic. We're going to keep talking about La Nina and South American weather and the drought situation that is in the United States right now. What does that mean? He is going to throw out some ridiculous numbers on a if scenario when it comes to beans and corn. You're going to want to give a listen. We'll also talk about livestock. And if my notes are any indication, this one's a good one. We have all sorts of discussions. We'll get into natural gas and what could happen in that market. Also, coffee. If you have any feedback for us, hit us up, market to market at iowapbs.org. I'd certainly consider it an honor if you would share this episode with anybody. Tell them that you listen, watch, or read the M2M podcast. So now let's go to James Roemer on the sunny beaches of Florida. James, since the last time we talked, I did go down to that golf course and look for your club. It's blowing so much right now. It blew out today, 40 to 60 mile an hour winds, finally blew your 7-iron out. Do you want it back?
I only play tennis these days. You keep it. I'll sell it to you for $10.
Oh, that's a heck of a deal.
Is there rust out there? I hope.
In all seriousness, I mean, the wind is something. A blizzard is what I'm dealing with right now, and here you are on the beach. What's the weather like where you're at today?
You can see it. I know all you fellows in Iowa are a little jealous. I spent 12 cold, snowy years back in the 80s in Iowa. So come visit me in Florida. It's nice.
What city are you closest to again?
Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
There's tons of theater and music down here. I'm on like 3 different tennis teams. And I'm up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning watching the weather from Iowa to Hong Kong in between all that. So that's what I do. I'm still watching the weather, still very passionate about it.
We talked in early to mid 2020, and at that point, La Nina was one of those, I hear a couple of people. Sure enough, La Nina settled in on South America, and it has made a constant point on our program of discussing what's the weather in South America. Did the La Nina take effect the way the forecast looked, or was there a little difference in the way it actually played out in real time?
I think it's been a little bit stronger than maybe many people thought 5 to 6 months ago. And, Brazil and Argentina is just such huge crop areas. It's hard to really isolate exactly where all the problems are going to be. I mean, obviously, we've seen, I think, a 2 or 3 million metric ton reduction in the soybean crop in Argentina and Brazil. But La Nina can switch things around a little bit. Typically, it's Argentina that has the worst of the problems for South American crops. But there's rain actually coming here. Look at this, where you see green over my head there, my ear. That's above normal rainfall the next 2 weeks in some key South American growing areas. So this drought could be a lot worse. And I'm not sure we're going to see much more of a reduction in the South American crop over the next 6 to 8 weeks if these rains verify.
Well, we've seen how things can change real quick. There's been pictures of dry to flood in some of those areas that you've mentioned. So you're telling me it's not too late to see the weather story change a little bit in South America?
No, I think so. I think Mato Grosso, the main producing area of soybeans in northern Brazil, had a dry last couple of months. This is typical with La Nina. And we have a moderate La Nina right now, so you would think that maybe these rains in Argentina would be just temporary and potentially get hot and dry again in February. If that's the case, the grain market's going to go off to the races. But at least for right now, as you see, there is some improvement coming on. I don't know if that was really going to affect the market with all these strikes going on in South America and the incredible demand from China. Normally, you would think that the grain market would begin to sell off. But look at this. We have this drought that's just expanding from the Rockies and the area in red there, even into Iowa. We saw that end of last summer reduce the corn crop a little bit. This La Nina holds on, and I'm concerned that we're going to see some reduction of yields again in the Corn Belt next spring and summer.
Do you see it's La Nina as the reason for the dryness in the southwestern United States?
I think so. I mean, I am definitely a believer in a warming climate. I think that, you know, I believe in climate change. I've done all my research. I don't know if the solar cycles affect things that much right now, but we saw this historical fires in California right over the last few months. And then a year ago, millions of animals dying in Australia. But anyway, the dryness has kind of exacerbated and moved east, in part because of La Nina, in part also because of the way the Pacific is changing off the coast of California. So, yeah, I think, most of my long range research, here's my in-house software called Climate Predict. Look at my forecast from May through July on average. The area in red there is balloonable rainfall over parts of the western, southwest Corn Belt and wheat growing areas. They're the analog years of the La Ninas that are similar to right now. And my goodness, if this happens, we're talking $7 corn plus and $8 wheat, maybe $17, $18 beans next spring or summer if this La Nina continues. Crazy, huh?
That's a pretty high, bold claim, and is that not just because of weather, but what ended up being a lesser crop in 2020? We just have less in the bin to start the year.
It's incredible because we started getting a lot of moisture in the spring, and it wasn't until that Iowa windstorm. I can't even pronounce it.
I'm going to say derecho for you.
Derecho. Only 3 times already. That derecho, God bless all the farmers in the Midwest that were affected by this. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Trying to forecast something like this, particularly living down in Florida, is not very easy. But that set the beginning of the bull market on fire. And then we have this Chinese demand, the Ukraine crop coming down, and then this La Nina with a slight reduction in the crops. And holy moly, we've had the best rally in grains since 2012. Obviously, we want to see higher grain prices, but we don't want to see this drought expand, which I'm afraid it's going to. You see the red area begin to move into the Nebraska and western Iowa. And that could very well be the case going into April, May, and June, unfortunately.
I want to stick with that map that you have right now, that drought monitor from today. Comes out every Thursday. The data cutoff is the Tuesday for those that might not be as familiar. So in the summertime, you'll sometimes see, well, it rained 3 inches on Tuesday. Well, if it's after 8 a.m., it doesn't get included. But look at the line west. You mentioned western Iowa. That did get dry. Nebraska, and then into the Dakotas and Kansas. That has continued to intensify red here as winter has taken hold. But look at Oklahoma and then northern Texas, James, another wheat area that's actually getting rain that's had a little bit of an impact here on the market too.
Yeah, and there's actually some snow and rain coming in next week. But I think that, obviously mid-March through mid-May is the most important time of the year for the winter wheat crop during the jointing and booting stage, and as well as for the Ukraine and parts of Russia, actually a little bit later. June, July, and August are most important. And with La Nina and also something we call the negative AO index, the Arctic Oscillation Index, see it over my ear, a warm block over Greenland that will I think it's going to produce a much colder winter the next 8 weeks over the Midwest, Iowa, and much of the East. When you have a La Nina and a negative NAO in January at the same time, you're looking at potentially the 2011 analog. And that was an expansion of the drought conditions, partly climate change, partly La Nina, partly the NAO index. In January, we can look ahead. And grain prices went absolutely crazy, as you know, the first part of that summer in 2011.
11 into 12 were, big weather years. We went from a whole lot of rain to a whole none of rain. It really changed in a hurry. So tell me what NAO means. What does that mean?
Well, it's a Northern Atlantic Oscillation Index, and it has to do with the jet stream at about 15 to 20,000 feet between the Arctic Circle and Greenland. And when the air is warm aloft over the Arctic Circle, it pushes the polar vortex south. It can also enhance droughts when you have a La Nina at the same time. We have seen pretty much the opposite of that. If you look on the left there, where it says positive Arctic Oscillation, that's what we had the last few winters, record warm temperatures. low natural gas prices, close to $2 last winter, heating oil prices collapsing. That happens when you have low pressure over the Arctic Circle. Right now, we have high pressure and warming over the Arctic, so it's pushing the polar vortex south. The main brunt of the real polar vortex is over Asia right now, which has been below zero in some areas, and also Europe. And because of the climate's warming, it may not be the old-fashioned, Iowa winters in the 70s and 60s of 20 to 30 below zero consistently. But I still think we're going to go into a somewhat colder pattern. And maybe we'll get a little bit of snow. We need it. We need some snow cover, obviously, in Iowa right now.
Well, there were some stories this week, I think last week as well, that talked about the splitting of the polar vortex. Is that kind of what you were just recapping for us? Are those kind of the same thing?
So if I get another picture here, see those two areas of blue, how it's splitting? One's going over Europe and one's going over the eastern United States, actually the Midwest to the east. The polar vortex is kind of splitting into two pieces. Actually, three. There's another portion going into Asia right now. If it wasn't for the fact that we saw this melting sea ice and some of the warmest weather in history the last few years, we could be talking about 10, 20 below zero temperatures for weeks on end in some areas. And I don't think that's going to happen, but it's going to be cold enough that I think it's going to set a floor in natural gas prices here. We may not go to $3.50 or $4, but we're not going to get back below $2.20 to $2.40. So that and a La Nina and a potential hot summer next year, I think we're also looking at the potential for natural gas prices to slowly rally. We don't have a squeeze in natural gas. There's so much supply right now, like we do in the grain market when we had Ukraine and the Midwest and now South America having problems. We got demand, a real squeeze situation in corn. If we had tight stocks and natural gas would go to $4 if it's cold, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, that would be quite a story, too. We were just looking at natural gas today, and it kind of looks like it's been stuck in a little bit of a wave pattern. It's just kind of not necessarily treading water, but it has been trending lower, and that supply issue is going to become an issue. Arctic air, cold air, we do need some of it. We just don't need 2 weeks of 20 below, right?
That's right. So my website, bestweatherinc.com, I have different newsletters on there. I have strategies. How do you trade some of this stuff? For example, heating oil has really collapsed versus gasoline because of COVID-19. Heating oil, jet fuel is also used, obviously, in airplanes. No one's been flying, so heating oil has really collapsed. But we get cold, and that split of the polar vortex, getting cold in the United States, Asia, and Europe, buying heating oil and selling gasoline as a spread is a good trade. Selling put options, maybe for the summer in natural gas, maybe the $250 to $270 put, there's an easy way to make $2,000 a contract, because I doubt very seriously we're going to see summer natural gas prices go down to $2 given my weather forecast. So there's ways to really profit from this stuff. And obviously, if you're a hedger at these prices, you're wondering if you should be hedging some of your corn and beans right now.
You mentioned some high teens, not just mid-teens that we're dealing with now. 60% is what the grain market has rallied, I believe, corn and soybeans since August. Yeah. Not just a ratio recovery, but weather realization kind of started to settle in. Do we have another 60% gain in our potential in the next 6 months?
I don't want to be wrong. I put it this way. I'm hedging myself here. If this La Nina weakens really quickly, and a lot's going to depend on the sun and the ocean, then we could end up not having a drought. I would say the chance of probably 65 to 70% we're going to. And then you're going to see the corn market will break $1, $1.50, obviously, in July and August. As we get closer to March and April, we see updates of the La Nina. We'll be able to come up with a little bit better forecast right now. But I think the chances are better than they have in years to see corn, over $7 this spring and summer. Weather can change. So that's why we have people subscribe to our stuff. We try to update you, give you the firsthand information. There's a lot of weather information out there, but there's not a lot of people that have been looking at commodities and trading for 30, 35 years. So, of course, I'm wrong sometimes, but I think options are a great way to take advantage of some of these moves. And, maybe you want to be hedging a little bit of your 2021 production right now, but I would not be hedging a lot of it the way that map looked. A minute ago, I showed you. That was there at the end of last summer, and it's still there, that dryness. So.
You mentioned, hedging the 21 crop. I was just reading something about that today, where someone's like, we only wanted to be 10 to 20% going into Tuesday's report, and it ends up that was probably a pretty good scenario. I don't know how you don't sell some 21 crop after the rally on Tuesday after the report. Are the government reports still important, or, that's what's traded? You got to watch that. Is that a better indication of the way the market's going to go, or is it on what USDA says, or is it going to be more weather?
Well, I think for the next month or two, it really is going to depend on how quickly China wants to rebuild their herds of livestock and, buying grains like crazy right now. The USDA report, has been pretty accurate the last few months, it seems. Look, we were limit up in corn yesterday and the day before yesterday, and they've been trending toward a lower crop for months. So I have to hand it to them. They've been doing a much better job. Maybe they have more reporters. I don't know. But what's going to happen going forward? Obviously, if we see another 1 to 2 million metric ton reduction in the soybean crop and corn crop in South America the next 6 weeks, this market's not going to break. It's very difficult because I see Argentina getting all this rain, but northern Brazil having some problems. So maybe kind of a wash. So it really comes down to the next 8 weeks, maybe more than the weather and more than these USDA reports, what China does and what's going on with these strikes in Brazil now and these tax ramifications in Argentina. There's a lot of factors right now, but come April and May, it's going to be all weather.
All weather in the United States,
sure.
In the Corn Belt area.
And
yeah,
boy, every map that comes out is going to move the market because we have the tightest stocks in corn in years. I think the tightest ever of soybean meals. So it's just going to be crazy. I'm 61. I'll still be getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I did that working for Freeze Notice for 12 years back in the 80s and 90s, if you remember them.
That's you just sent a shiver down some people. Oh, Freeze Notice. Gosh, I remember that. But James, I want to look at a little sliver on that map that you have there, and it goes from, say, Columbia, Missouri, through the central part, Springfield, maybe just north of Springfield, to Chicago, in northern Indiana, into Ohio. What's the potential if that thing starts to widen there? Because after you get to the east of there and south of there, there's a lot of good moisture in a lot of good corn and soybean growing areas of Illinois and Indiana, Ohio, into Pennsylvania.
Well, if you look at the analog years, now this is Climate Predict. I offer this with my newsletters. I use teleconnections to forecast sometimes 6 months in advance. All those letters up there, the AO index, what's happening over the Arctic Circle, La Nina, even over my bald head there, the weather over in India. I look at all these teleconnections and what comes up. Here are 3 analog years, right? 2000, 1972, and 2012. Well, 2 of those years, I know 2012, I'm not sure which one of the other one. 2 of those years, that dryness did expand in April through June and July into the central through eastern corn belt. I think 1 year did not. I got to go back and check which one, maybe it was 72. So that's concerning. There's a 65% chance based on the negative NAO, the block over Greenland and the Arctic Circle, the La Nina we have right now, this drought to expand, at least in the areas in red where you see, which is the southwest corn belt and some of the wheat areas. I think at least a couple of those years actually was a little bit further east than that, where the red area, you see where that arrow is. So I'm concerned. We'll see what happens in March and April.
You have a dry area where it's good cattle production, lots of grazing. We've had quite a story in livestock in 2020,
right,
where we've upset the whole food system. What was in the grocery store was there for the restaurant. What's that going to do to the cattle market when you can't turn out onto grass because it's all burned up, and you can't have them in the lot because it's too expensive to feed the corn? What's that going to do to the livestock producer?
Well, I think you probably know more than I do, but I guess you look back in history during most droughts in the last 20, 30 years, that causes liquidation typically, doesn't it? Right?
Yes.
And it changes the placement structure and usually I think is bearish the livestock market. And usually I think there's an inverse relationship, if I'm not mistaken, but don't hold me to that. So yeah, obviously that's a key cattle area there in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And with these high prices, who's going to be able to afford the feed, right? So there may be more movement, right? More selling off of livestock. that could flood the market, right? I'm just trying to remember all my history here. That could flood the market this spring or summer, be bearish cattle, but what, a year or two out with the cattle cycle could be bullish longer term because there's less cattle out there, I guess, in the feedlots, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
Am I
that
talking
plays
out of
out
my
the way
ears
I would
here?
think.
Okay, so it could be bullish cattle longer term, but I guess over the next 6 to 9 months, if we have a hot, dry spring and summer, farmers may be forced to sell some of their livestock. Yeah.
I get a lot of emails from you, and I always look at them. And one caught my attention. You wrote about the spider sentiment. And that one's coming up here real soon that you're going to be talking about in the next few days. That one puts, I know you're looking for it there on the computer, so I'm going to fill for you for just a moment because I threw you off that I wanted to talk about that. But what is the spider sentiment?
So let's see if I can actually upload this while I'm talking. I do three things at once here. Hold on. Maybe I can.
Well, when I told James we were going to do video this week, I kind of threw him. We're playing a little bit there. He's been able to. It's like we're in the Marriott Ballroom in Grand Forks right now. You're giving us a good update in real time, and I'm throwing you all these curveballs. But you got a little bit of a spider web up there.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's cut off on Zoom. Good thing, because it probably scare all your listeners and viewers. But if you see to the left of the screen there, basically any number above 0 is friendly. 2 or 3 is pretty bullish. I have cocoa at -1, bearish weather in West Africa. I have natural gas at +1 to +2. The spider basically represents my experience, looking at crops, looking at supply demand. I give scales bearish and bullish for about 10 different markets in my newsletter, Weather Wealth, on my website, Best Weather, to try to give traders and farmers around the world an indication of what my feeling is about these markets longer term. So you can see I'm kind of bullish grains. I'm actually more bullish coffee than what it says there right now. I'm getting concerned about some of the crops in South America too, and also Vietnam's had all sorts of problems. I don't think many people in Iowa trade coffee, but if you do,
we drink it.
You drink it. If it gets cold, it also is bullish. So this is really the first time in a long time that my spider has been bullish, like 7 of 8 commodities. We've broken out technically. We have inflationary fears right now. We're printing so much money. I mean, God bless everyone. I hope we get your $600 to $1,200 check. But we're printing money. It's inflationary. It's put pressure on the dollar. It's also causing foreign countries to buy all these commodities right now. So there's a lot of things going on, not just the weather. If it was dry in Argentina for another week or two, this would just be added fuel to the fire for the grain market. But with rains coming in, it's possible we can see some profit taking in soybeans and or corn here over the next week or two a little bit.
That dollar, are we done pushing that thing lower? What are the pressures on the dollar right now, James?
Oh boy, I mean, it's complicated. I'm not completely sure. I think we're having some stability now in the economic situation and also the presidential situation, which has been just ridiculous, as you probably know, and everything going on with politics and the White House and anyway.
Whole nother podcast we could do. Get us both in trouble.
So I think if we don't print a lot more money, if we see some stabilization in our government and some confidence that COVID's going to end here soon, that should stabilize the dollar somewhat. So I'm not completely sure, but I would think any major sell-off in the dollar at this point is probably unlikely. Are we going to rally 20%? No, we may stay in the trading range for a while. But any panic selling of the dollar, I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Do you see quick economic changes with the new administration that's going to alter anything you're talking about?
I've been following it close enough. I certainly think I'm the believer of make love, not war. I mean, I hope that what Trump did has helped the Iowa farmers and Midwestern farmers finally, because I know there's been a lot of conflict and arguing and yelling and screaming, and maybe now, putting pressure on China is a good thing. But personally, I hope we could be friends with them, make amends, develop some good export and import trade policies, not fight, just everybody love each other, get together and support who we can. And in the long run, hopefully that's going to just be very good for both our economy and, for the farm industry.
All right, James, let's finish up with this. Give me 3 things I need to watch in the first 6 months of 21 South American weather, I'm going to guess, is 1. Weather in general on the commodities might be 2. What are the 3 that you see? I'm just kind of recapping what I think you have said. What are 3 big things you think are going to be the big stories in commodities and weather in 21, in the first 6 months?
Yeah, well, I think we're looking at, again, because of a warming climate and the sea ice melting of the Arctic, we're going to be cold, but not extremely, unbelievably severely cold. But nevertheless, I think we're looking at heating oil prices potentially rallying, natural gas prices bottoming. I think we're looking at concerns for the wheat crop in the plains and this drought expanding. There is going to be some snow in Oklahoma and Texas maybe next week and some rain. But over the next 6 months, the drought potentially expanding into parts of the Western Corn Belt a little bit further. South America, I think you're going to see the coffee crop being hurt in northern Brazil a little bit more, but I do think you're going to see Argentina soybeans being rescued from this drought. Otherwise, beans will go to 17 or 18 bucks in February. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see a blow off top here soon. And typically with the South American harvest coming on, we have to look very closely in April and May, because if we do have drier weather for the harvest after these Argentina rains, you could see a sell-off in soybeans with South American harvest pressure. So those are all the things I'm looking at right now. Coming up.
There's very few dull moments ahead for you, James.
Yep. Likewise for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, James Roemer. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. And we're going to have to make this like a regular 6-month appearance. It's always kind of fun to catch up with you.
I would love it. If people want to call in sometime, I have a lot of friends and clients actually in Iowa. Some of them I've known for 30 years. I'd love to. It'd be fun.
They reconnect. James Roemer, thank you so much. Yeah. My thanks to James Roemer for his time today as we discuss the weather and the commodity markets. We'll see if that beans in the teens holds. It's just all about what the weather is about. Thank you so very much for watching, listening, or reading, and have a great week.